Mystery Monday number 18. The Lost Mine of Headless Valley. The little single-engine aircraft dipped sharply on its starboard wing, so sharply that Linda Fogland almost lost her determination to be calm. She said nothing, but couldn't stop herself from grabbing for a handhold on the dash. There was none, of course, and the action made her feel a bit foolish. Her husband, John, was eminently reasonable and easygoing. But there were two things she had learned to never criticize: his judgment of wines and his ability as a pilot. Yet when their Cessna 152 banked even further to follow a loop in the river, she protested. "Is this really necessary, John? We're so low I can see the fish down there. Any lower and we can drop a line off the wing." John Fogland's answer was a mischievous grin. He leveled out and trimmed, but not before waggling the control wheel just a bit. "Linda, we can't take a chance of missing the marker. Von Zelt said he found the mine entrance on the right bank, about a kilometer above Virginia Falls, and that's where he set out the orange tarpaulin. We've got to follow right along the Naani here, and we've got to fly low." "Okay," Linda responded, "but the falls is not even in sight yet. Do we have to scare the trout? It's bad enough being in the middle of nowhere and dealing with the drunken Von Zelt. Not to mention that all business about the skeletons with the missing skulls." John nodded sympathetically and adjusted the trim wheel again, and the plane shuddered in a tiny pocket of turbulence. "And those people," Linda continued, "those people in the town back where we took off. You can surely tell they think we're nuts." "Naani Butte?" John raised his eyebrows. "The people in Naani Butte? Sure, they look like they're frightened all this part of the country. What would you feel about a place called Headless Valley? But I think it's just a tourist gimmick. They're no fools." To undertake this flight, the Foglands had left a wilderness tour group that was canoeing and camping along the Liard River, having followed the Mackenzie from Great Slave Lake. Like most Canadians, they were vaguely aware of the legend of Headless Valley, of the McLeod brothers, and their lost gold mine. How, in the early part of the century, these two prospectors had gone up the South Naani, grub-staked for the season, but had never come back. When their bodies were found, their skeletons, a note said that they had found gold, a huge deposit. But there was no gold with the skeletons, and no skulls. They had been neatly removed. Since that time, several prospectors had died or disappeared in an attempt to find the McLeod brothers' mine. Now John and Linda had joined the search. They had met Dieter von Velt at Hudson's Bay Post in Fort Simpson. John, with his happy capacity for meeting people with ease, immediately established a nodding acquaintance with almost everyone in the settlement, including Von Zelt. After a few drinks and some earnest conversation, John had been sufficiently convinced, or at least intrigued, by Von Zelt's claim to have discovered the mine, that he arranged the rental of a plane out of Naani Butte. Linda was less certain. She agreed that Von Zelt may indeed have been a trapper and a prospector. He may even, as he explained to them, have been almost completed a degree in geology at Washington State before settling in the North. But in her opinion, Von Zelt was a reprobate. That was why, as she and her husband followed the looping turns of the South Naani River in a rented Cessna 152, she was less disposed than he to be excited. "Look there," John pointed at the side of a jagged peak, "and there." Two groups of Dall sheep interrupted their placid grazing to stare briefly at the noisy intruder. They were over a dozen in each group, and not one of them appeared to be standing on a level support. Their very altitude on the mountain begged the question of how they got there. Linda felt her mood begin to mellow. "They're beautiful," she breathed. "And just look where they are. You'd swear that they were painted onto... Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Just look at it." "Virginia Falls," John replied with both awe and a bit of tension, for the little aircraft had begun to rock in the turbulent atmosphere created by the magnificent waterfall. "About twice the height of Niagara," he said as he reached for the throttle. "Imagine putting Maid o' the Mist under there." He paused, and just for a second or two to stare at the pounding white water, and then pulled more power into the Lycoming 235 engine. "We've got to get over that cloud in its making. I don't want to go through it or around it, or we might miss Von Zelt's marker." Linda said nothing. She simply stared at Virginia Falls as the airplane surged higher. Leaving the low altitude now made her feel a bit isolated and lonely. "Okay, keep a sharp eye now, Linda. It's got to be near here." As the airplane eased closer to the water surface again, Linda could make out tiny details in the river. She began to feel excitement in spite of herself. The falls, the sheep, the whole adventure. It was all so stimulating. This time, when John turned the Cessna on its side as the river bent to the right, Linda did not mind, even though her perspective changed so that she could see straight down the side of the window. The river was wide at this point and stretched beneath the plane out of her vision. In fact, she strained so hard to see the other bank she almost missed the tarpaulin right beneath her. "There, John," she cried, "right down there." Her husband banked even harder so that out her window she could see the tarpaulin spread out on a rockfall. It was plastic and ratty looking, but orange just as Von Zelt had said. And more important, it was there. Neither he nor Linda had really expected it to be. John circled around the tarpaulin marker twice before either of them spoke. Linda was first. "You're thinking what I'm thinking, aren't you?" John sighed. "You mean just how phony Von Zelt might be?" "Yeah, I'm thinking that." He paused and moved the control wheel to make an even tighter circle. "At least we know the near degree in geology is probably in his imagination." "No question," Linda nodded. "I'd bet there's no prospector either. But then, it's not a complete waste. Let's go back and circle around the falls again, and then see if we can find the sheep once more. I've never seen more beautiful scenery." Linda and John Fogelin have apparently dismissed the worth of Von Zelt's claim that he discovered the lost McLeod brothers' mine. Why?